Hey, Alex, how goes? There's a low rumble coming from your microphone, Alex.
Oh,
Okay, now it's gone, but that's because now you're on mute. Hey, David. Hello, David.
I had my fan up too high, so now it's fixed.
No, your sound right now is perfect, and there is no low rumble, and there's no chirping.
And no Mickey Mouses, no Donald Ducks.
No chipmunks.
We got to sort it out how that happens.
So what about my audio? Is it coming through okay? Too soft, too loud, staticky, chopped off at the top?
It sounds louder than mine. I can't hear my headphones from. My mic's not going through the system.
Can it hear high voices? Can it hear
So-
low voices?
So I can't tell.
David, you look sheltered.
It's rather cold here. It's about 5 or 6 degrees, which is quite unprecedented. And
6 degrees, about 10 plus 32. It's about
it's the
40,
woolly
low
hat
40.
and the
Probably
duck-down
the low
jacket
40s
and the
Fahrenheit.
bedding on top of that.
It's been that cold recently, although this week it's warmed up significantly. Last week it was about as cold as you are.
Yes.
The polar vortex is coming.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm
Hey,
alive.
Mary. Hey, Carl.
Oh, it was a good start.
I've got a big project on to organise my trip to the US with the publisher. securing publishing rights to publish my story. That's going to be
Congratulations,
interesting.
Alex.
And I want to bring
Very
with
good.
me, I'm going to take along with me a proposal for an amendment movement so we can get the ability to opt out of the democratic process removed from the Constitution.
That would be a good thing. That would be a good thing.
You're saying remove the privilege of abstaining from a vote? Is that what you mean?
The political right to refuse to partake in the democratic process. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a privilege, but it's also what's causing the issue.
Okay,
mm.
well, let's gather. We now have 6 of us, and we haven't started our check-ins yet. Anybody feel like a check-in, or shall we dive right in? I've been hearing more and more comments about the utility of check-ins. Some people are really for it. It says that, hey, I can really talk about my personal state, and so I should actually get that out of the way so we can actually focus. Others really just want to get focused. They don't need to share their personal state. So I've heard opinions on both sides. Just FYI.
I said
Okay.
that check-ins are important if there's a newcomer in the room. Otherwise, they can. I think most of us would agree they can be dispensed with if all the people in the room are familiar with each other. And just have a brief check-in, say how everything's cool.
I think the curious thing would be, do you know yourself well enough to know that there's something in the back of your mind that's going to be distracting you, keeping you from being focused? And do you need to share it in order to sort of park it in some way? I think that's another interesting way to look at it.
Put that on the agenda.
Okay.
I guess it gives a gentle heads up
Way
of where we are
getting
as well.
becoming present in the moment is really, I mean, that's what it's
Yes.
about. It's more important if you've got, I think it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult if you're, if you got a group of people that you really don't know. I mean, it's like everybody here has been on, except I haven't talked with Dave, I don't think before, but everybody else I've
How are you doing?
flew. So, yeah, guys, it also depends on how long your your meeting is too, because it could take up too much of your meeting time.
It's good to give more time to the global challenge than to our own personal whim, I think.
Right. Okay, so that's why I make it optional and preferably concise. But if people really feel like they need to, share something, then we sometimes can tell, and we give that some space. Okay, so Alex, were you about to check in?
Yes, there's a lot of tension in the atmosphere in the politics in Australia. But I don't want to talk about that. I'll talk about me. And I'm getting prepared for a trip to the US in order to talk to publishers that get the publishers fighting with each other over the pricing war. And then I get a better outcome for my book. And introduce a movement to adjust the Constitution slightly, an amendment, a constitutional amendment, so that more people get out and vote, and the representation of the majority of the people is more fairly expressed in the result.
So just so I understand, a constitutional amendment to the Australian or the US Constitution?
We've already got compulsory voting here.
Okay, so you're talking about affecting the US.
Yeah, compulsory voting for people in the US and
All right.
Alaska, Hawaii,
Okay.
and the Marshall Islands. I think there's quite a few islands the US own, not just the Marshall Islands.
Okay, thanks for the check-in, Alex. I think I'll go next. I just want to let you guys know that right around 2 or 2:30 p.m. my time, local time, yesterday, after about 60 or 61 hours of no power at the house, I finally got power back. So the last two and a half, maybe 3 days, I've been actually working out of a shared workspace office about 15 miles away. And this is actually the longest power out I've had since I got here to the island. There's only been one other power outage. Now there are two that have been longer than 11 hours. The other one was about 30 something hours. So this is twice as long as the previous. It was a very, very strong windstorm that took place Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. Knocked out the entire island. There were over 200,000 people in Western Washington that had no power. And some of them are not going to get power back until Monday, turns out. So I know people that have been, waiting and waiting and waiting, and just finally got some back yesterday. Like some have power yesterday, but for some reason they didn't have water pressure back. So anyway, just thought I'd let you know that I've been working a little bit out of unusual circumstances, but hopefully as of last night, I'm back to normal. So just want to say there was a chance, had I not been able to have power, I would have been doing it on a phone and asking one of the rest of you guys to really, moderate all that sort of thing. But good thing I don't actually have to do that now. I'm back on my 65-inch screen looking at all you guys in 4K. Okay. Anyway, other than that, I got new initiatives, but that's beside the point. I got probably, a page full of notes here ready to re-engage on multiple different topics should there be a lack of ideas on what to talk about, but I don't anticipate that need. Okay, that's it for me. Anyone else?
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate. I live right by the hospital, so I think the longest we've ever been without power is 20 hours, and that's very rarely. I mean, we're usually we're priorities.
Yep.
Stuff. Well, I've been trying to get back into the disability area again, and I actually start a 4-month detail to work on accessibility issues this coming week. So I think so. Look forward to that, and I'm back to the Doug stuff what I was doing years ago. So that's the title I've come up with for my dissertation is Making Awesome Things Happen, a contributions model of disability. So
good stuff.
Yeah, I've got I'm taking 3 classes this year there's been such a flurry of messages on the admin thing. I figured I'd drop in and get a pulse in real time rather than trying to deal with all the
backlog. One of my topics has to do with that anyway. Okay, anyone else?
I might as well check in. I've moved from the main monastery down to a smaller monastery, which is our sort of sister monastery. I'm living at the Chinese community across the road for the moment, so I'm sort of nearer to Chiang Mai City. Part of the satellite groups of monasteries that we are supported by and support. And I have got flu. So I've been ill for about 5 days, so I might cough at some point, but I'll have to turn the mic off. But everything's going amazingly well apart from that. Made a decision to go back to our home space, Lighthaven, because we've been out and about roughly for about 2.5 years now, helping other eco villages and the like across Thailand. And our ideas and processes have been implemented by the Thai government and the royal family. So we've sort of got to a stage where it's about to run independently or interdependently. So that gives us a chance to go back to our space and start to build our own eco village and put our own hopes and dreams into the earth, into the soil. Work with our own little monastery to get the hub up and running and to move forward with our scope of ideals, connect back to Gai Ashram and our sister eco villages around us as well. So it's good news. So hopefully hopefully earlier, but by March we should definitely be back to Lighthaven and fully functioning back in our own space.
Do you mind if I ask you 2 quick questions about that?
Go ahead. Yeah,
One,
absolutely.
when you say you've actually gotten acceptance from the Thai government, does that mean that they compensate you or recognize you or give you some kind of remuneration that sustains you? Is that kind of recognition?
No, what they do is they say they're great ideas. We'll love all of your proposals, and we'll class them as the King's Royal Project, and he will shine brightly.
Okay. I guess the second
You
question
get-
is,
Go on.
when you use the word monastery, does that mean that there are only men in these
Well,
villages?
it's more a temple. So there are the Mechi, which are the female monks, but they cannot fully ordain. So they wear white and, you know, do everything bar ordain and wear the orange robes. It's a little masculinated, to be fair, but it's a nice mix as well. It creates a nice mix within the monasteries. I don't know why it's like that exactly, but it works, and there are a lot more women turning to the monastic lifestyle at the moment, and it balances it out because it's been a very, very masculinated system and space for a very long time, and it's starting to create some nice equality and nice balances in the temples, you know. So yeah,
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions.
you're welcome.
Anyone else for a check-in? I think that leaves Barry and Colin. Otherwise, I'll count to 3. Okay, cool. All right. So let me just give you a lay of the land as far as I can see it, as far as all the various different threads of conversation and topics that are kind of still out there. And I'm sure these are not all of them, but these are the ones that came to mind when I just thought, okay, so which threads are we likely to pick up? The first one that I came up with is recently, there's been a lot of activity in various different places on Facebook, as some of you know, various different topics. And I'm finding it difficult to engage sometimes because the moment I think I understand a topic, the next time I come back, there's been 58 other, texts or messages or etc. And I'm not sure whether the topic I thought was in focus is still in focus. So there's just been a lot of other stuff going on. So I don't even necessarily have the time to go back and read it carefully to see, everything that was mentioned. So part of the symptom is then that I don't engage because number one, I don't know whether I'm on topic. Number two, I don't know whether any of these 57 other topics is now the topic. And I don't know whether or not, this is just a question about focus. So my question is about focus when we have groups of people who don't necessarily have the same equivalent or even approximate level of time to invest in a particular discussion to see how that discussion might still productively engage. So I'm wondering, whether any of the rest of you feel that or whether this is just myself. On the other hand, I can sort of see that if I was really, engaged in a conversation and nobody else was there and I was still trying to help the group, get excited and I'm offering this, I'm offering that, I'm following up on this, I'm following up on that, does that help? Or does that, as I just described, tend to even confuse the others who are not quite so engaged? So that's my first question. And you can either respond or I can go on to my second question. I'll leave it for 3 or 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, I guess how many do you have, and you want to just lay them out, or
I got
you
about a
have
dozen.
some ideas on that one?
So I got no end of stuff to think
Yeah,
about.
I figured that buckets are fuller.
And that's only one of them, okay?
Okay, well then, yeah, that's been a perennial issue, and I think it just maybe looking at some kind of Google Docs or something like that, where you actually have a topic-based page and then people can contribute to that, and then you could be looking to refine it and say kind of a introduction kind of thing. So somebody new coming in, something along those lines, rather than these message threads.
So, hey, Carl, hey, hi, Kayla. Carl, before we talk about solutions, I was just curious, does anybody else feel what I felt when I described it? And by the way, Kayla, Tyra, let me go back and just recap for about 30 seconds the first topic that I laid on the table, just to see if it resonated with anyone. Carl was actually responding to it already, and I know Colin's ready to respond, okay? So let me just talk about what the issue is. I've just seen a lot of activity in various different groups within Facebook recently, especially in the last 2 weeks, where there's such a volume of messages that the last time I thought we were on topic A, then I come back and I find that there's 57 or 89 other messages. And now I don't know whether we're on topic B or C or Z or A prime or whatever else. So I actually have trouble following because I don't have enough time. And therefore I don't respond. And therefore I could actually, I guess, be viewed as unengaged or uninterested, but that's really not the case. I'm just really trying to figure out how to engage. So I'm just expressing a sense of confusion around being able to keep up with the volume of things going on in various different threads. Now, Carl was already, into solution creation, but I was just wondering whether this resonated with anyone, or am I just, my own out here and everybody else is engaged and understands what's going on, and we can talk about something else. So that was the first topic I laid on the table. And by the way, all of us have had a chance to check in already, except for Kayla and Tyra. So before we engage on the first topic, I was just curious whether Kayla, Tyra, you guys would like to check in. It's optional, but we missed you too.
I just wanted to say hello to everybody. It is breakfast time, so I may put myself, with my background for a couple of minutes, and then I'm all yours. But it's good to see everybody. It's beautiful here in California. I think yesterday it was like 85.
What?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And then last night I took my son and his friends to downtown Ventura. So it's been nice these past couple of days.
Last week up here was in the 40s. This week it's been in the 50s. So we feel it's quite balmy when it's in the 50s.
Same here.
Yeah. Hey, Tyra's cat. I don't know your name, Tyra's cat. Tyra's cat just sat right in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Tyra, if you're listening, you have an option to check in and say hi. We missed you guys, both of you, okay? And your cat. So anyway, Carl, sorry to interrupt you, but I was just curious whether you were saying you were proposing a solution because you felt the same issue.
Oh,
You
yeah.
recognize it's a perennial issue.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get at work and stuff too. You have the thing where you come back and there's like 20 minutes. I mean, if you go to the conversation thread, it's like well into the double digits. And it's like, why don't we have a meeting and just talk in real time about? So obviously, when you start getting that many threads. So yeah, it's been a thorn for decades.
I mean, it's same thing with meetings, same thing with emails, same thing even with voice messages, so I'm just trying to figure that out. And I'm actually quite astonished that Colin has managed to stay silent all this time, but I know he's bubbling up with some response later. Anyone else,
you're
or
right.
shall we move on to topic
I'm
2?
waiting.
Oh,
I'm waiting patiently. I'm waiting patiently.
We need a decentralized dynamic link library.
Hey, Tyra.
Shall I go? Yeah, Tyra's still got to check in yet.
Tyra, I forgot the name of your cat. I know Butter is the name of your dog, but what's the name of your cat?
This is Cleo.
Oh, Cleo. Okay.
Cleo. She's ancient, about 18 years old, and she's really special. Hi everybody. I'm just rolled out of bed, so I'm having my coffee, and I need to fix this iPad, so I'm gonna mess with it for a minute. How is everybody? Thumbs up? Okay, sorry it's late. Yay, it's good to see you all. And I see David. I don't think I've met you, David. I'm Tyra. I'm in Pasadena. Have we met?
I don't think so. I'm
Yeah.
David. I'm in Thailand. So good to meet the cat as well.
Okay, you were speaking about something not too long ago, but weren't you? You've been on before?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, Kayla. Congratulations on your house. Okay,
My
I'm going to be
understanding, but
quiet now.
David can correct me, is he visits monastery to monastery to monastery to monastery, helping build eco villages, and I think he's currently in Thailand.
Well, that makes you the coolest person in the world, David. For sure. I mean, that's like a great way to spend your life.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm muting. I'm going to drink coffee.
Yeah.
I'm
And
getting
if
my
you guys want to
refill.
know anybody in Hollywood, Tyra can hook you up. Anyway, I still want to meet oh man, never mind. So should I introduce topic 2, or are we still interested in topic 1?
Well, I need to know when Tyra's show starts so we can all apply to be guests.
Tyra's getting ideas for shows from watching us.
Yeah. Well, my son's working on a movie right now that has just the most killer cast. It's De Niro, Margot Robbie, Chris Rock, Christian Bale. It's a great, it should be a really, really fun, good movie. So I'm proud to say he's working on something that he's really excited about.
Wow, those are big names, Tyra.
I know, right? He's so casual about it too. I'm like, come on now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Alex, were you in the middle of an offering here?
I was thinking about Barry's comment, and I thought the military psychologist was talking to the military policy advisor, military lawyer, and they said, well, Donald Trump's unhinged. So we've got to be careful when Biden takes over.
Is that a possible topic? The transfer of power and recent events in Washington? Washington seems to get a lot of attention these days.
I've been bunkered down anyway, but I'm like about 10 miles from from downtown.
Okay. Hey, since that came up, I can't help but ask, Carl, how close were you to the Capitol building when all this went down last Wednesday?
I'm in at home with the latest stuff.
Okay, so you're not working in
Bunkered
the
in
office at
with
all?
my dad. My dad's 87, so getting groceries delivered. So
Okay.
not getting that really
I
quarantined.
apologize for distractions, but I got to ask this also. There are claims that there are people on the inside, Congress people, as well as staffers, as well as police, who helped the rioters get inside the building. Now that seems obvious from here, but what do you know about all of that, if anything? And can you talk about it if so?
I'm kind of outside that, but yeah, it seems pretty obvious that there's got to be some things there. I mean, they said that, you know, the tour group the day before, and that people seem to be able to make a beeline for some of the offices, and you can't do that without knowledge of the building that's not on the web's publicly available. So
Yeah. Also, I know I'm monopolizing this, but I just got to say this, okay? Being from the Stanford community, as I believe Barry is, okay, I just got to say, Scott Atlas and Josh Hawley are disgraces and embarrassments to the entire Stanford community, okay? I just want to be very, very clear about that. I'm in various different groups, and many letters have gone out, signed by hundreds of people. Basically, in a sense, disowning Scott Atlas and Josh Hawley for their statements and their participation and some of what's going on. And it really is embarrassing that they claim they come from Stanford. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. There's even Republicans that are talking about needing to expel members and stuff. So it'll be an interesting next month or so, that's for sure.
I mean, it's in the Constitution. If you actively act against the Constitution, it is, I mean, how much more clear could it be? That's a violation of constitutional law,
Yeah, I mean, there's the provisions for disorderly behavior. So, however, that gets defined, but there's a lot of, certainly if anybody's aiding and abetting, that goes without saying that they're.
Okay, I'm sorry for monopolizing. Please, you guys can have the conversation back. I will stop monopolizing. Hi, Butter.
I think there's a lot of women here in Australia waiting for Donald Trump to come over again so they can grab him by the old fellow and drag him around.
I'd pay for that ticket. I'll contribute to that ticket. Okay, so I guess that was topic 1 and topic 2. Topic 1 was the collaboration issues that I just mentioned. 2 is all this stuff in Washington. Anybody want to propose another one, or should I go on to my next one? And let's see if there's sparks any interest. Okay, I'll take silence as acquiescence, okay? I've brought this up before, and this is the whole issue of transparency, which is related to Washington, and it's related to focus, okay? Which is, it came about through conversations around shame, conversations around accountability, and also conversations around corruption. So I'm just posing again the concept of transparency being a good thing. And is it something we share, or is it something that unfortunately, because of so much potential for embarrassment or potential for shame or potential for accountability, that there seems to be a resistance to transparency? And I talk about it in personal conversations as well as at the national level, at office of the president or any level in between. That any chance there's secrecy and stuff happening in the back, there's chance for corruption, abuse of power, hypocrisy, disingenuity, if there is such a word. But I think you know what I mean.
Say the word
That
again.
was a related topic, huh?
Say the word again. What?
Disingenuity.
Disingenuous.
Being disingenuous.
Yeah, I know disingenuous. Okay.
I was trying to make up a word and see if it was obvious.
Disingenuousness.
Yes. Hira.
Can we, so sorry, it's just this time of morning that they need lots of attention.
It's okay.
In addition to shame, and what you're talking about in transparency, lying, I think the art of lying and the art of the little white lie, not just those big, bold, obvious lies, but those little white lies. And I'm finding the older I get, I see how people slip into just not being honest because they don't want to own their shit. And I think that it goes in there with that element of shame. Okay, I'm gonna pop off for a second and take the pets out. So I just want to throw that in.
Oh, we can't follow up then without you being there. Okay, we'll follow up later when you get back on that. Okay. I understand. I have pets too. Okay. David, you were about to respond to that?
Yeah, I think it's all about beginning to release trauma as a global conglomerate as a global consciousness. You see, if we wish to class the Earth as one country, we really have to look at our divisionary tactics to avoid our own trauma and to work on our own ego. An ego will hold on to every aspect of its individuality that it possibly can on the personal level and the mass level. So I think, speaking about Washington, it shows how wholly incompetent centralized governance is as a means to protect and uplift not only a country but individuals, and the right individuals in a space, how corrupt the process can be and how the puppeteers or puppet masters still play the game behind the scenes, like ego does within our own psyche. So when we start to purge truly, we have to have individuals that are willing to hold space and literally let whatever puke comes out come out and say it's okay. We're all at that stage. We're all at a stage of fear. We're all at a stage of guilt, of shame. But this space is safe. It's okay. We're all in process to move into a better earth, a better space, and a better self, or a better selfless. In the fact that we let go of the programming through the trauma release, we let go of who we've been programmed and think we are, and we look deeper into it. We then see the damage that's occurred in our lives that we can't help, the damage that we've perpetrated, and we see firsthand, we live firsthand the way to be able to come to terms with that within, and we're then more lenient with everything and everyone throughout. It gives us our autonomy, it gives us sovereignty, and again, beyond sovereignty, I guess, in every situation that we come into. And it shows the necessity for us, first of all, decentralizing, taking responsibility, and governing our own space, and governing our own household, and governing our own communities. It can't happen overnight. We really have to face some of the terrible things, ecocide and genocide. Everything from washing, dish soap down the sink to it poisoning plants and animals and marine life, etc. To the major aspects of what our countries do as a whole in that vein, selling chemicals to other countries, pesticides, herbicides, how this centralization has become a cancer across the world. And within us, how our ego has become a cancer. But it's all repairable if we face the demons and face the darkness and integrate them. And it's a brave step to begin that process. But an extremely necessary step. The Donald Trumps, the Bidens, whoever they are, it's a system that's corrupt and broken. The entire idea of separate countries on a planet that is, infinite if we work together and finite if we separate, proves the necessity for us to work together, to put down our differences, and remember that we breathe the same air. It's the same sun that warms our faces no matter where we are, the same stars we see every night, the same water that we drink and regurgitate. So we can make it pristine water, which means that we're pristine, or we can make it dirty, sullied water if we haven't got the guts and the strength to start to face our demons and work with them together and not be shocked by each other's demons.
Thanks,
Well, that's just an idea on it.
Kayla, and then I have a follow-up to that one also, and then Alex.
First, I want to say hi to Josh. Hi, Josh. I see you. Well, your logo.
Yep. Hey, Josh.
Second, I had wanted to kind of echo what Tyra said about the truth. Also, the absence of information is, you know, withholding pertinent information and is detrimental to the truth as a whole, you know, and it has to do with a lot of transparency issues, period. I know with this whole coronavirus thing, you know, kind of going back to Washington as well, um, you know, so many people are um, disregarding the law, and um, you know, one has a right to support that with on their own volition. But some people don't know. Like for instance, a local restaurant here is open, both patio dining and indoor dining, and people are supporting them, which is their right to, regardless of whether it's against the law or not. But some people don't know that it's still against the law to have indoor dining, and people are purposely withholding that information, saying it's not a it rather than saying they're violating, you know, the stay-at-home orders. They're just simply not saying anything, and people who don't know that this is an infraction are supporting that restaurant. And there have been um, lots of communal disagreements. The community is divided when it comes to transparency. And, you know, that's truly prevalent with our politicians. The absence of information, the absence of truth as a whole. You know, I think we're more empowered when we have all of our knowledge and can make a sound decision, whether we go against, you know, the law or against somebody else's rights and decisions or not. But just to be cognizant of it is important. Over.
So I'll just say it's my turn and then it'll be Alex. And also welcome, Joshua. So I got 4 things to say. And it's based on what I've been hearing lately, okay? And that is that I brought up the issue of transparency, and I do believe in transparency. Although I do know that it's very, very, very difficult to be transparent and to disclose and be vulnerable until you have safety. Without feeling safe, I don't think we're going to get to transparency. And this whole issue of safety is what happens if I'm going to address one of my deepest, darkest, sinful acts or, you know, bad habits or, you know, things that I've done and don't feel safe. I feel like I'm, you know, going to then be a pariah. I'm going to be shunned. I'm going to be excluded, kicked out, put in prison, etc. You know, I'm going through the whole range of possible feedback. So until we can figure out how to give people safety, I don't think we're ever going to get transparency. So that's thought number 1. Thought number 2, and I think it was maybe, I forget which of you said this, but something about self-governance. Maybe it was you, David, about actually, you know, taking care of our own shit. You didn't say shit, but, you know, I'll just use that word, okay? And that is that it triggered me because I, in particular, dislike so much activity in the court system simply because people cannot responsibly meet and work out differences themselves and feel like, oh, well, you know, I'll just go to the courts, they'll take care of me, etc. So that's another very strong response I have. I would much rather, as responsible, autonomous, sovereign agents, interact with you, assuming you are that also. And then let's, you know, look at how we engage and how we can work something out. This is key to coexistence. If we cannot do this, and if we rely on central higher authority, then we get what we get today. Okay. If we want this decentralized stuff, we have to take more responsibility and autonomy and our own sovereignty and take it seriously, you know? Okay, so that's idea number 2. Idea number 3, and I forget again who brought this up, is this notion of ego. I think it might have been you also, David. It strikes me that the entire country here has been based on ego, because we worship freedom, we worship independence, and we think that that's the highest value of all, is my quote unquote freedom to do whatever the bleep I want. Literally without thought for consequence or implication. You look at people, you know, going around claiming they have a right to do certain things without any care for what happens to others. And I know you know what I mean, okay? That notion of freedom, that notion of independence is a warped sense of freedom and a warped sense of the rights that we claim to have in this country. You know, you don't have to resort to Spider-Man and, you know, wise uncles to know that with freedom comes responsibility. And if you shirk the responsibility, you don't deserve that freedom in my book. And if you want that freedom, you have to take that responsibility. They go hand in hand. So I do support what you're saying. I do support working things out, you know, as sovereign agents ourselves so that we can coexist. But we have to have a different notion of what our fundamental rights are that we sort of worship in this country. And I will posit that absolute freedom / independence is not it, okay? And then the last thing I'll close with is a lot of this would not be possible if we still valued truth, if we still valued learning, if we still valued growth. There's been such an unhealthy attack on truth that we have to repair that at the foundation. And all the stuff about alternative facts strongly fed that crumbling of the truth. But I will also say that there are whole communities, I believe, of light workers, of the new age, you know, spiritualists who just know, quote unquote, the truth and know, quote unquote, how to channel the universe and know, quote unquote, you know, intuitively what's right. You know, I support the possibility that that's the case, but I don't support the, you know, blind acceptance of it without understanding more deeply. So I do think that a lot of the crumbling of the truth has been due some part to this notion of what truth means, about the word experience being replaced by the word truth. It's true for me, therefore it must be true. And I think a lot of that is going to lead us into a lot of unstable notion of what truth really means. There's a much stronger foundation on which, you know, the real truth, that which we can all, you know, count on. And that to me is much, much more valuable. And I'll again just mention that the truth for me is what doesn't disappoint me. If something says, this is true, that God will grant you all your most abundant wishes if you just, you know, take these beads and do the following set of actions every day. If I tried that, and I think I have tried that, I was disappointed. On the other hand, if somebody says, you know, take this, light this flame, you know, you'll get a little bit warmer, I've never been disappointed by that. So to me, the possibility of being disappointed is an indicator of where truth might lie. And I know that's controversial, but I'll just leave it at that. And by the way, I know I laid a lot out there. Sorry for how long this was. It's Alex's turn and then Tyron.
There's something in that ego thinking and the higher thought processes that allow me to think loving thoughts. That's what got me more progress and more harmony with my outlook on life and others' religious views, spiritual views. But the fact that the public servant, like a politician, has to have a higher degree of moral values than the average citizen is important, because they've got a duty of care if they're a public servant or a politician. You know, from the humble clerk at the front desk at the courthouse right up to the president. A higher level of responsibility and duty of care. So they should do a course when they get their job in the public service, a course that teaches them these things and makes them pass a test. So they know they have to adhere to a higher standard of action, a higher standard of moral behavior and scruples, telling the truth. Because truth, basically, when it boils down to it, relative to the observer. And so thinking with higher thought patterns, thinking loving thoughts, is how I make friends with my ego and calm the storm, so to speak. So that's where I've got to. The reduction of this process is pretty simple when you look at it like that, because there's a lot of dynamic meta tags that could be included in databases and web pages that will link us together with the AI. Over.
I got a rejoinder to that one, but it's Tyre's turn. And then David.
So just kind of pinging off of what you said, Sam, alternate realities, you know, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in my neighborhood, everybody has an alternate reality of what's going on in America right now, whether it's the vaccines. My neighbor, who is a well-educated woman, and she firmly believes that the vaccines are meant to control us. You know, she will not get a vaccine because she thinks the vaccines aren't real, and that it's the government's plan to undermine small businesses and let corporate America continue to take over. Now, she has a stack of books on her coffee table, all about vaccines and how bad they are. And that's her research. Look, I've done all this reading. This book says so. So we all have an alternate sense of what the truth is. We're all in our own realities. Now, whether we choose to hop on somebody else's train, you know, that's up to us. Now, the other thing about a decentralized government, first of all, I love the idea of that. I love the idea that we as human beings can come in and monitor ourselves and evolve. But I see that one of the things about having a centralized government is when we have a pandemic, we can roll out a vaccine and we can all have access to that vaccine in a timely manner. But right now in the United States, we have all these different states that all have different programs and all have different realities. Some states say this isn't real, other states say this is really a problem. So where do we land in the middle of that? And the other thing about the government is I like my nice roads. You know, I like the fact that, you know, we are able to vote on school levies and taxes to boost all of that. Without our government, then we get back to what is freedom? Does freedom mean you can just do whatever you want because of your alternate reality? Or do we need a central notion of laws, checks and balances? So to me, yes, I like freedom, but my idea of freedom might be very different from someone else. I don't need to carry a gun on my hip to feel free in America. But I know lots of people that do. They think that that is their right as an American to walk into the Congress, the House on Capitol Hill with a gun on their hip. And that is happening. So, and they firmly believe that. These Trump supporters firmly believe their truth to the point of almost literally declaring war to those who oppose it. So I think as a species, we are very far from coexisting in the millions in this kind of independent, free-thinking, loving way. Now, lastly, I'm just going to tag on to what Alex said, which to me is the solution, is to come from a place of love. Love shifts everything, at least it does for me. If I'm coming from a place of love towards one of my enemies, rather than vengefulness, I have a much more productive day. So I see the value in government. I see the value in a government that coexists peacefully with its contingency. Is that the right word? With its contingency. And I see the value in leadership. You know, we need leaders because there's a lot of really stupid human beings walking around this planet who are looking for leadership, who are looking for someone to guide them towards the light, whatever their light is. It's just in our nature, I think, as, you know, survival instinct. So it all comes back to ego. It's very simple. It comes back to the basic emotions: ego, love, hate. So where do we as individuals go from here? I don't know. Thank you.
You're muted.
Sorry, David, and then I'll raise my hand.
I think if we want a foundation, we want some fundamentals, we should get back to something that is extremely necessary. And that's life and creation. Because we have construction, which is actually the dissemination, the destruction of the natural world to create something that's made by humans. The centralization of this egoistic ideal creates dead cities like termite mounds, founded on the bones of native peoples that were land stewards and stewarded our connection to the stars and various different things. They had fundamental creative systems that were extremely cohesive, and although the history books of the interlopers stated that they were savages and fought, etc., etc., most indigenous peoples had exceptionally good relationships with animals around them, to the fact that predators would not predate on indigenous peoples and would actually approach. There was a kinship and a kindness. But beyond that, Sam, it's good that you've picked the dog up at this point, because if you look at any politician or anybody in any state of power, or for what the word means, power, if you couldn't trust them to look after a sick puppy, they certainly shouldn't be looking after a country. And if it's a centralized governance system, you can never tell that. If you can't contact them face to face and spend 2-3 days working with them side by side with a shovel in their hands, the King of Thailand's not the perfect ideal, but the last King of Thailand would go into a village and assess what was needed by speaking to the elders. And then the next year or a few days later, machines would roll in and a highway would be built or whatever was needed, or a dam, and he'd be there next year with a shovel. Now that's what we need. We need people we can talk to. You'll see a few, there are other leaders like that. I think it's the leader of Bolivia that lives in a tiny hut. This is what we need. We need people that are people. If they're going to be a figurehead and a face for a country, they actually need to be part of that country. They can't be living in a £1 million mansion and floating around in a yacht, having people slave over them, making them food, etc. They need to cook their own food and clean their own bloody dishes and wash it and tidy themselves, because otherwise it's an idea of slavery, etc., etc. If we stand with the fundamental foundations of life and creation, this is a good starting point. I think on fine roads, etc., etc., if the control systems that are in place were not in place to keep the oil system and all of the free technologies, etc., we would have cars that would fly. We'd have vehicles that would fly, that would have guidance systems that would stop them bumping into each other. We wouldn't need roads anymore. We sort of don't. This could have happened an awful long time ago if governments hadn't sort of grouped together. We've got a false religious system. We've got a false monarchy. We've got a false monetary system and a false governance system, which basically work together to keep us like a pinball bouncing around in a pinball machine when the planet could have ascended. If the information technology was used for ascension-based knowledge to lift the vibration of the human race, it was personalized to each village, etc. So we would have our own say in what that content was. If we worked hand in hand and shared all of the knowledge and didn't patent it and tie it down, and maybe patent the stuff that could be damaging rather than the stuff that is expansive and high vibrational. If we set our sights on paradise for all humans and all life on the earth, and then start to integrate the knowledge of how it all works together, then I think we'd have a chance. And I think the planet would turn itself to a golden age quite quickly. So it's, do we want that? Do we want our children to live in a cardboard world of Louis Vuitton and McDonald's and this, that, and the other, and termite style cities? Or do we want to honor our future ancestors who have gifted us the earth, something worthy, something beautiful to hand on? Honor our past ancestors for the time and the hardships they've gone through. Because at some point we've got to turn around and take a good hard look at all of it and realize when we've created, and I'm sorry to say, there's a crock of shit basically. All of it's based, sadly, on British parliamentary rule, European parliamentary rule, and none of it is based on those that actually did look after the earth and are looking after the earth still and still persecuted. We have to take a good hard look at the genocide and ecocide that has occurred and is still occurring, the dead cities that we've created, full of filth and squalor, the systems that this is perpetuated, and at some point the dominoes that have fallen, somebody has to stop and we have to start picking them back up, and we have to start looking at what kind of future we want and what we want to do about it right now in this moment. Because to be blatantly honest, the human race is an absolute disgrace to life. And that's a sad fact. You look at the war that could have been terminated and ended. You look at the spiritual belief systems that could be much more flexible and fluid, that have killed the prophets that have come to us. You look at the damage that we do on a daily basis without even thinking, just putting toothpaste and things down the sink or drain, looking at the foods that are chemicalized and damaging, looking at the systems that are chemicalized and damaging, but looking at the glory that we're potentially capable of as well. Look at how far we've come and how kind and gentle and generous we are. How can we build on that? How can we build on that on a daily basis and be brave enough to stand up against those that would persecute? You know, it's a David and Goliath situation. How can we be brave enough to say enough is enough? Now, I say enough is enough. Sovereignty for me is a gold coin owned by the king, and the king's as corrupt as everybody else. The king's just the greatest pirate or the toughest outlaw, and you can dress them up in whatever. And the government is very similar, and the top religious systems are very similar as well. It's all based on a false monetary system. I don't want any part of it anymore. I want to be with the good guys that are actually really rebuilding things. So I declare personally and publicly that I am beyond sovereign, that I have the humility to step away from the monetary system, the humility to step away from the parliamentary system, the humility to step away from the European ideal and system of life. And I want to live a humble, quiet life. I live in a bamboo hut. Half of this stuff's mine. I'm going to cut back on that. I want to live a very, very simple life. So I hope to retire on the 21st of September this year to live a much, much simpler life with no plastics, nothing else, very quietly, and just move into a state of meditative life. I've done my work. I've done the things that I hope to achieve in my life. They're perpetuating across the world. I'm connected to many eco villages and many other people that believe the same things. And I'm stepping out of all of the crap that has gone before, and I denounce it wholeheartedly. And I hope that I can become a good steward of the planet for future generations. With that, I'm complete.
Thanks, David. Unless there were other hands up, then I had my hand up. Okay, well, let me just do something really small, which is those of you that have heard me talk about what I believe and what I'm trying to help with, know that this theme of decentralized government, to me, is not one to take to an extreme. And that's because the government allows us to do things at scale that, as Tyra mentioned, we wouldn't be able to as individuals, research into science and vaccines and medicine, and building infrastructure clearly is part of that. Actually, standards and measures is a key part of that. And anybody who doesn't really, appreciate the empowering power of agreements is free to drive on whichever side of the road they want. Okay, makes a point very, very quickly. So there is a minimum notion of what government is allowed to do, and that's what the government, the Constitution laid out very, very clearly. All other rights are held by states and individuals. But the Constitution talks about what we can do as a federation of states. So I just want to acknowledge that point. And yes, who was it? George Carlin says, take a look at the average person, Tyra. Half the people are dumber than that. So you do make a good point. The point is, how do we let good leaders become leaders rather than those who just look for power? Right now, you have to be so good at this government game and so, in some sense, unethical and immoral to grab power no matter what the outcome is. And those are the people who quote unquote succeed in government. So this is just an entirely sick way of building governments. And I know you all know that particular point. The really interesting thing in the last 10, 15 years or so is the real possibility that we might actually become much more decentralized because of crypto technologies, the ability to become owners of our own profiles, identity, key attributes via some of these technologies that you have heard about. That's also not only an enabler for good, but also an enabler for bad. So a lot of dark web, illicit, unethical, immoral, illegal activity happens in that world as well. All technology appears to be a two-edged sword. The question is how we as individuals, as people, as communities, choose to wield those technologies, those swords. And that's, again, back on us. We have to take that responsibility. We have to grow up. We have to understand the consequences and work together to create that ourselves. So I just wanted to respond to a few of those points that I heard going out there. So Colin, I think you showed yourself. Is that a way of holding a hand up? And Josh, Barry, I don't think we've heard much from you guys yet either. And Kayla. Over for now for me.
Yeah, quite a lot of wide range of worldviews coming out today, which is interesting. I definitely like the first topic, I like the first topic about focus, because I think that's what this space is for me. Now, days like today, we're just kind of meeting in the town square, as I think Sam has said before. So a lot of times this is like the time. Okay, you've never said that. Well, I guess let's back up a step then. I think the way people
All right, Colin, I apologize to you. I apologize to you. Okay. I'll respond after you complete. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I don't mind active listening if I'm wrong. I want to be wrong as little amount of time as I have to be. But
Okay, then I'll interrupt one more time, okay, since you allow that, okay? In 5 seconds, all of these topics are connected. They're connected to the truth,
definitely.
they're connected to sovereignty, they're connected to governance. To me, they're all connected. It's not just meandering around, random field in the town square for me, okay, over.
No, I don't think any one topic is without merit. Like I'm saying, it's just a wide range of things is all I'm saying. And focusing on any one thing, is kind of what I would like to see done betterly. So one thing I came across recently was the addition of Barry in the group. He's become more verbal than I am, which is quite a thing. That means you got two now overly sharing people. And I try not to share that much, but I mean, essentially on the back channels, on the chat. And this is kind of one of those, well, what's it for? Like, why are we here? So like, what's barn raising for? What's unblocking for? Why am I at the GCC? Why is somebody else at the GCC? And originally it was about global governance. And I think it still is for me. It still is for Sam. But I'm kind of in a way where I'm not actually thinking I'm going to solve global governance or create a teen constitution or teen Congress, which was a great idea, Sam's. And it's asking the right things, but it's, and I think Doug is working in a different area. So I think the better we can understand where each person's coming from, like David, he's been quoted today as being the coolest person in the room or in the world by Tyra, but I definitely couldn't give up, wanting transistors and electric guitars, right? Like, how would I plug in Thailand in a tent, right? I just have to dream about doing the thing that I want to do. So how is playing electric guitar evil, right? Is it because of all the connections of, if I would have invented the transistor myself, then it's allowed, but if I get it from some evil corporation, then it's no longer allowed. Like, so it's really, what I'm trying to say is extremely complicated, and to listen to the different worldviews kind of makes me think that's nice to get to know people, but it's really nowhere near, I think, getting any focus towards where we might contribute or be of service. And I think the thing that I'm working on is just trying to be understood. So if conversations are wide ranging, very general, then that's one kind of a conversation. And then if you focus in, that's another conversation. Then if you have people who actually have credentials in an area, maybe a degree or something, or worked in that area, then that's another conversation. Somebody who actually knows, an expert, you could say, and they would have a different kind of a forum. So and we've tried different kinds of conversation channels. So let me just try to back up and put this together. I would like to see if something comes up that somebody really wants to discuss, like Donald Trump, for example. Like, sure, we can discuss it here and get the idea going. Sam's got it. Like, this has been moving up the list. Why don't we actually make although this is a entropy, I think if it's important, it might be a halfway solution to create a channel that's not unblocking members, that's not barn raising members. And I think Carl did one just a couple days ago. He did one to discuss something that Heiner brought up. And that is a perfect place where you're going to get 20 messages that you want to read, as opposed as a bunch of drama that Heiner comes into on barn raising. So I think it's taking the interesting conversations and putting them in the right channels with the right people who are interested in talking about them. and just announcing here that you're really interested in it. Because I'm not giving up my electric guitar. There's no way. But I do believe that plastics are bad if misused. So I think it comes down to the abuses, and we have to realize, I think, I don't use the we all, I try not to use that, but we all have to realize that we're animals, right? And we're not perfect machines. And we come in all different shapes and sizes of capabilities and interests. And I see it as a huge mixing board of personalities, and any one person can have a whole different set of parameters. Therefore, that's why I like to push secular space where we can come here and introduce what it is we're interested in, because nobody's going to screw with your knobs where you put your settings. When you're in a secular space, you can put them wherever you want. What you do about it is another thing. You can't just have free reign. Like if somebody came to the space and they're a complete evil person who liked to do evil things, and they put on their mixing board that this is what I really want to do because I'm fighting this just cause, and I've already judged them as evil. So they put their sliders all some way. Well, that's an indication that this person is dangerous. Does that give them the right to pick up arms and make a new civil war, or whatever the case may be as we're talking today? So yeah, I think different specific topics need to be channeled so that we can talk about the Trump thing, or we can talk about the AI thing, or legalized prostitution. That's another thing Sam brought up in a chat. And I would just like to see, instead of all the logorrhea in the background in the channels, create a thread or reach out and tap the interested people you'd like to talk about that too. And because I think it comes down to, and I'll end with this, I think it comes down to keeping a secular, open mindset, and being ready to check off the smart people problems as you recognize them. Because I think that's the big thing. Too much information is not good. It's information you need at the time to help you understand what's happening. That's what's valuable. That's why I like models and stuff, because they don't tend to fail me. And when they do, you make a new model. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
You're muted, Sam.
Sorry about that. I've got this camera in the middle of my screen because my screen is so big. If I put the camera at the top of my screen, then you're looking down at the top of my head. If I put it down here, you're looking up my nose. So I put it right in the middle of my screen. So sometimes I have to just adjust it somewhat. So I apologize for that. Anyway, I believe, Alex, you're next.
I want to talk about Colin's t-shirt. I've got one that's got the guy with his head open, the top of his head open like a lid, and then spewing out of it is all these pieces of electronic equipment and scientific apparatus from the laboratory and ideas. And it's like a great meme. I'll put it up on the GCC website when I get time later on. It could be useful with a caption, so I'll think about that. But also this pleasing people thing is an issue sometimes. Become a people pleaser instead of following your heart. So that's just the logarithmic scale that my mind's following at the moment. I'm going off track, so back to the group. Over.
So does anybody have their hand up? Because I don't see it. Otherwise, I'll go next. Hey, Josh, you've been relatively quiet. Barry, you've been relatively quiet. Just want to invite you guys to participate and share your thoughts if you want to. Barry, you're on mute.
Yeah. What I've been doing is trying to boil down what people are saying to this sort of 1 or 2 or 3 word phrases, as Gertrude has urged us to do. So the way I listen, because I can't memorize speech, I have no ability to tape record stuff. I'm boiling down what I hear into 1 or 2 word phrases or topics, which I hope is helpful.
Yeah, in fact, I think that helps with mapping too, and with finding keywords for searching the transcripts later on. Tyra.
Yeah. Okay, so first, David, this is totally off topic, but the ceiling of where you are looks really beautiful. I'm trying to get a look at that. So, I lived 11 years in the mountains recently and and I really simplified my life. I got rid of pretty much all major appliances, TVs. It was pretty minimal, which is great. And my folks lived off grid for almost 20 years. And so I learned a lot about that lifestyle. So then where does it take me when I move back to a city? And I live in Los Angeles. And as you know, there's millions of people that we have to coexist with and stay true to this sense of back to the basics. And it's a tough juggle. I like being in the city because I like the diversity. I like the personalities. I like the creativity and the cohesiveness of a city and the fact that everybody manages for the most part to get along here. And I find that a beautiful human experience. So back to where it leads me to be a steward in a major metropolitan area. And one of my goals this year is to get solar panels put on our home. And it's a major investment, and it's a really big investment to where it's easy to say, oh, we'll do that again soon. But what I like about that little tiny step of not using, being on that utility grid is taking responsibility. When you have solar panels in your house, you have a nice little thing set up that tells you how much energy is being pulled off that microwave. It lets you, and it makes you aware that this isn't just magic. There's a reason why the lights turn on. And we take that all really for granted. At least I do. I take it very for granted that I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to have electricity. So yeah, I can get really bummed out thinking that there's nothing I can do on my scale. And so I think taking that personal responsibility, and when we live in this capitalist society, especially in America, and you mentioned the British, the colonization, it's a very tricky thing. It's tricky to be able to walk your talk, whether it's composting your stuff or it's just hard. I find it hard. I find it hard to figure out ways to not be part of the consuming shark. Yet I really like the luxuries of the new world, of electric cars, of smart homes that have cameras that you can see what's going on in your house. I like having a TV now because I can really discern what comes my way. I went 11 years, no TV, and now I really dig it because I can educate myself on a daily basis on sacred geometry or building tiny houses. And I appreciate all that. So I'm just kind of throwing that out as, how do you, I know, David, you're really living that in a reality right now. But how do other people manage to become stewards? I know Joshua's got it pretty dialed too. What are you doing in your personal life that you feel makes a difference beyond just being a loving, compassionate person? I'm complete.
David, then me. You're on mute, David. David, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I think for me, what you're doing now is enough, always is. We're in a transitional period where we're moving to stages where we can do more, because we're looking at the entire structure of the trauma or the dis-ease that has occurred throughout our systems. And whatever has happened, all of the things in the past that have happened, we're at this moment now. So we have to make best of this point, of this moment. So you know, speaking about the indigenous peoples of the world and the movement of the globalized ideals, we're at this stage now where it's balanced to where it is. So we have to make amends at this point. So I'm sure that the majority of the indigenous people of the world would not want us all to move out of their mother countries and, you know, take everything that we have with us. They want to integrate because they've been sort of transformed to a somewhere in between space, much as we have. But we've lost a lot of our connection with the natural world. So I guess it is our responsibility to try and reconnect with the natural world and the indigenous peoples and live a life that's worthy of the ancestry that we've had and turn around this oil tanker that's heading towards an iceberg yet again, and you know, about to cause an oil spill. We can turn this into something much, much more beautiful. We have time to do this, and whatever we do and wherever we are is perfect. It's where we're meant to be. There's a divine green print, or there's a knowledge within nature and within everything, and we are a tiny speck of dust in the corner of a galaxy which functions perfectly. So you know, everything that we need is sort of directed towards us and just sort of nudging us in the right direction to get to the base of that trauma, to the light that's there. It's like an onion skin, I guess, where there's a spark of divinity within, and at the very outer edge there's a spark of divinity, and everything else in between is the fallacy that we've created between us, a story that we've concocted between us of separation and movement away from that which is already perfect and already in balance. And we're sort of a little lost in the story, that's all, I think. So it's just about recorrecting or reconnecting to our inner light, to let the outer light connect with it again, letting those onion skin layers fall away and just being a little bit more beautiful and kind to each other, and everything else will come into play because of that. Our cities will be more green and more pleasant, and our governance will be much more green and more pleasant. There'll be less masculinization and more feminization, and it'll settle at a balanced point, because everything's mankind and manipulation. We've gone off course just a fraction from the source of everything, and it looks at this moment like we're miles away from where we should be, but I don't think we are. I think we're quite close. We just have to sort of recalibrate and take a look and just rebalance and be a bit kinder and a bit more loving towards each other. And that's the heart and core of it all, you know. We're all capable of so much love, infinite amounts of love. So let's start showing it. Let's start being that safe space that people can come to purge and let go. So with that, thank you for that.
Thanks, David. You've mentioned a couple of times now trauma, and that's the one thing that you know, I gotta admit, I have no idea how to understand that. Not just personal trauma, but trauma that spans decades or centuries. I mean, I know someone who was very, very badly mistreated as a child. They have trauma. If you take a look at the indigenous Americans here, they've had centuries of trauma. You know, the Jews coming out of Germany, lots of trauma. The blacks coming out of Africa and the US, lots of trauma. Chinese, the rape of Nanjing, probably lots of trauma. Taiwan, the 228 incident in 1947, lots of trauma. I don't know that I've seen any of that really heal. I guess we just have to accept and live and try it the best we can, but I don't know what healing looks like, because I don't think any of those are actually healed. So I don't know how to deal in a deep way with trauma. Because I'll just finish one last thing, and then Tyra, you can go. But I've really been trying to help this one friend who was really badly abused as a child. And that has made her create so many walls because she can't trust anymore. Her trust was absolutely blown away by the one person she should have been able to trust, her father. And now it's really hard for her to trust anyone. I don't know that that's ever going to change. Think about, what the American Indians, the indigenous people here have gone through. There's nothing I can imagine we can do that'll ever right that. Blacks also, every one of the cases that I just talked about. I don't know what healing looks like. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Tyra.
Sometimes I think healing looks like being of service to others. So I had read some accounts of people who survived the Holocaust. And, if I was in their situation, my immediate thought is, oh, I would just kill myself. I'm not, that's where I go. I would just check out. But these people survived, and they survived under hideous circumstance. And there was this great story, and you guys have probably heard it, that when, and it may not even have been during the Holocaust, the Jews were fleeing, and, an elder woman says, I can't go on, leave me behind. I'm of no use to you. I'm slowing you down. And another person in that group said, we need you to carry the babies. Could you please just hold the baby and carry the baby? Well, once that elderly woman had the charge of taking care of that baby, she kept going. And that's how they kept the elders to keep coming, because they felt valued, because they were being of service to someone else. And I think that that's what healing looks like. So, Sam, when you say, how can I help my friend? Perhaps your friend can help someone else who has been traumatized in the same way. And she can tell that other woman, hey, I've been through what you've been through. I know what it's like, and I have survived. My heart may not be able to trust anyone, but I am here to tell my story. And to me, that's a beautiful example of how people heal the trauma in their life, by being of service to others. And complete.
Thank you, Tyra.
Also, Sam, your friend, if she ever wants to talk to me about it, I'd be a great audience. I've had, if you are a woman on this planet, chances are you have been sexually abused on some level or another by a man. The statistics are shocking, and I'm no exception. And I've survived my trauma. That doesn't mean I don't have a lot of scars. It doesn't mean I'm not completely messed up when it comes to relationships with men, but I have survived, and so has she. So if she ever wants to tell me her story, you are welcome to send her my way. And then I'm of service to her, and vice versa.
Thank you, Tyra. I can't talk, I'm all choked up. Alex?
I think if you do a search, you'll probably be able to find a support group for survivors of sexual abuse, survivors of violence, domestic violence, and the support groups that are for the victims of those situations. And the people who go to those, frequent those groups, meet very much along the lines of other support groups for addicts and overweight, Overeaters Anonymous. They have the program. They learn to deal with resentments. They learn to come to terms with the horrors of the past and the evil, or what some would call it, the bad temperament, the shocking lack of empathy in the perpetrators. So how do they find out that these groups are available if we don't share them around, if we don't share that news and we don't put a link on our page or something like that? it's a project we could get into. That's a focus session for another topic. But it's an important one, I think, needs a bit of attention. So I'll put it on the back burner and carry on listening. I haven't forgotten it. Over.
Thanks, Alex. David?
For me, I think the first thing that we have to do is surrender. We have to surrender to our own darkness and our own light, and bring it into a state of unconditional love, and let it have a space to sit, to be integrated. We can start that process by firstly apologizing to everything and everyone that we could have possibly hurt throughout space and time, our ancestors, what we could possibly do in our future lives, and wholeheartedly apologize from a space of absolute honesty, and allow others to tell the story unhindered, without stopping and say, oh, but wait, but just let people tell the story. You see, it's all about energy. So if we start the flow of energy that releases the guilt for the things that we've done, genetically held in our DNA from our familial past and our group past, usually in circle, in a safe space, an indigenous circle, remembering where we came from and what we have done. I guess that's a beginning. Allow people to put down the medicine bundles, allow them to leave them there, and say, look, I can't tend the wounds that you have, but I can look to the heart of the scar and see the light that shines through from that. And that's what you're doing, Sam. And it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. You're opening your heart to let her, allow her light to shine through the scars. And that is the beginning of healing, because we all have scars. We all have a damaged inner child. And if our communities are more bonded and more beautiful, people like Hitler would never come to be. The trauma would never get to that stage, because everybody in that community would take him and tell him how much he's loved and remind him of everything good that he did in the first place, of every act of kindness and every act of joy and every act of beauty that he had perpetrated in that community. Remind him of his greatness and his brokenness and his wonder and joy. And we can do that to each other. We don't have to wait. Compliment each other honestly. Tell somebody they're looking fabulous, or that their heart is as vast as an ocean, or just bring kindness into it and start the process. Start your own inner process. Look inside. Where's the pain? First of all, touch the space. Start to look at it and release that pain. It's the start of it. If you know that you're hurting, then you know that you can heal. I went into a relationship with a person I didn't want to be with. I allowed myself to be bullied into that relationship. So every act of lovemaking was rape, as I allowed it to happen. And I was bullied and downtrodden. Now, I could have hated the person, but in actual fact, it drew me closer to the pain that he had gone through in his life. And I guess to an extent, in the interplay, we released a lot of our trauma. There was violence, there was many other things. And other people have helped me get to the base of those scars and find the light. That's the only reason I do what I do today. I tried to kill myself 3 or 4 times. At one point, I prayed to God that I would survive it, and I lost the rope. I decided that I was going to hang myself. When I first came to Thailand after the trauma of England, I'd had a very hard time. I put my dad's gun in my mouth, and it was a very long rifle. So I tried to pull the trigger with my toe, and I couldn't quite jam my toe into it. So I thought the trigger must be stuck. So I picked the gun up and turned it round to check the trigger, and shot through the side of the wall. And I was outside cooking, and he didn't know. So I was sort of spared from doing that. But from that point onwards, my life changed. I realized that we all have a part to play, and I've helped countless people from that time. I wake up at 1:30. I have about an hour's sleep a night. And anyone that's in trauma, I can talk through and out of, just about. Not that that's a brag, it's just, it's something that I can connect with other people's trauma. I realized that the only way I can be happy in life is if everybody else is happy too. And that's a pivotal point. Unless everybody else on the planet's happy, I can't be happy. And I don't know if it's selflessness or stupidity, but it's a good philosophy for me, and it works. It allows me to feel completely awake and alive on about an hour or 2 hours sleep. And from the rest of that time, I do Zooms, I do individuals, anything I possibly can to start my day early, and I thrive on it. I love doing this. I love trying to bring people together. I love trying to see people smile. I love trying to help people see the light inside themselves. I love them dealing with the trauma. I love them puking in a bucket as well. It's quite funny. And you've got to have a sense of humor. It's the most important thing. Healing's about laughter. It's not about pain. It's not about suffering. It's about letting go of pain and turning it into light and laughing lots and long and hard and sitting around a fire with a nice hot cup of coffee or whatever you want. And it's about electric guitars. It's about your own cup of tea, what you want it to taste like. It's about how you find your happiness and just being happy with where a person is and how much they're doing. They might use 20 plastic bags a week. It doesn't matter. If they're aware and they're trying, and we're all good at the heart. Do what you can when you can. And just be kind and gentle and always give space. Because that's what we all need. That's all it is. Love is limitless. It fuels everything. If the galaxy was selfish, Saturn and Mars would fall out, blah, 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 and everything would just skeet out of existence and fall apart. So we have to believe in something. So why not just believe in love? Why not just believe in the beauty of a galaxy and in the mote of dust that we're on, that these things aren't insurmountable? To bring one planet together so that it believes that it's one country, one people. And the people, or the race that I belong to, was life. It's not a race. It's a gentle saunter. So we don't need to be in any rush for this. We just need to stabilize where we are right now and just honor where we are and be a bit more grateful for all the things that come to us, like Sam and Carl and everybody and everything and the technology. And if we are, then we soften it and make it brighter. And the things that aren't that soft and bright, we help to soften, or we don't tolerate it and we move on to a different game. You see, if the odds are 80% stacked against you, like in a casino, leave the game, leave the table, find a table that's more rewarding. Find a table where if you put 50% in, you get 100% back, and everybody around the table gets 100% back. You do that with biodiversity and love. You plant one seed, you get 100 trees because it bears fruit. You get food, you get shade, you get clean water, you get clean air. It's a win-win situation. So invest in things that are worthy. Invest in life and creation. What it's all about. With that, I'm complete. Thank you for listening to my ramblings.
Thanks, David. Tyra?
I love the idea of self-forgiveness. You know, I can lay in bed at night with insomnia, and my brain will rerun everything I'm regretful about. It's kind of stunning as I watch it. And this happened recently. I replayed tapes from my childhood on up to present of things that I had regret about. And as soon as I forgive myself for not being able to control those situations, I am a much happier human being. I had to forgive myself that my daughter died. I couldn't save her. I had to forgive myself that I can't have the physical body that I think I have in my mind. I have to forgive myself all these things in order to move forward in self-acceptance and love. And again, that's letting go of the ego. So self-forgiveness, like Sam, you have to forgive yourself that you can't help your friend in the way you'd really like to. And it, you know, that's kind of a small example. But I know for me, I feel better if I forgive myself that I'm just a hot mess. I'm a mess, and that's okay. I can be a mess. I don't have to be perfect in the way that society has said, you need to be this, you need to be that. And that compare and despair. If I start comparing myself to the girl next door, then I'm in despair. As an artist, if I say, oh my gosh, that person's making such profound art and I'm, you know, felting little hearts. But does that make my process any less valuable? I don't think so, because I'm tapping into the divine every time I'm creating. I'm tapping into the universe, which is constantly creating itself and beyond. And so even though I might think that my life is inconsequential, if I'm sending out a vibration of love and self-forgiveness and stewardship, then I feel like I'm tapping into that frequency. And I don't know a lot about science, but I do deeply believe that the frequencies we give out affect everything around us. I don't know how it can't. Anyhow, with that, I'm complete. But I love the idea of self-forgiveness. I think it's a really positive thing.
Thanks, Tyra. Colin?
Thank you, David, for condoning electric guitars as part of the good universe. It's really the most selfish example I can think of something that I don't want to give up. When I was a child and investigating the most non-hypocritical religion I could find, you could say fundamental, least hypocritical, most fundamental. I came across a decision like that one time of getting, you know, I was thinking, okay, there's this power. How do I appease this power? Everybody in my community is saying, yeah, this is a good idea. Figure it out. And so I came down to the decision of whether I was going to toss out my my vinyl. If anybody knows what that means, it's their record collection, their music. We didn't have VCRs. We had diamond needles and round turntables, and you can't dance too loud or it skips the record. I still have them too. So, you know, I couldn't think of why anybody who would love me would want me to throw all of that joy out the window. I just couldn't compute. And that was just like there's, you know, I've kind of got the thinking mind, so I had all kinds of other things, but that's just one that was personal, right? That, you know, just like, okay, me as an individual, nobody else included, am I going to throw these things away? Like, what sacrifice needs to be done to be considered better, to make me better? And I just don't have that group mentality, I guess. They never got me because I snapped out of it. But they do get people who are hurt and need that all hole filled. I was just looking to be better, but I just was weighing it, and I said, this can't be better. And I said, look at the people around me. You can't judge people how good they are because they're here at this church. I know that guy, and I know that guy, and I know they're not so good as they think they are. So really, this religion thing really didn't do anything to anybody. It's at that point, you know, it's quite apparent to me that it takes a while to get out of it. And I wasn't like this angry atheist leaving, storming off, but over time it just faded away. And once I got to university, it was like, it was a passing, fading thought of any kind of, you know, it turned into more of a mystery. And how could people think so differently, right? That became a fascination for me, and gone through series of awakenings in my life where I realized how different I am than other people, as opposed to when you're a kid and you think everybody's the same. There's layers of that. And I think some of that awakening is involved in trying to make adapters for people to have conversations. So that's, David asked a really good question. You know, I think at the end of what he was saying, what I heard was, you know, what do you want to spend your time on? You know, and Sam at the very beginning said, I'd like to dive into all this drama, but I just don't got time. And that's why if you make a separate channel and make, you know, what we consider a micro agreement, to put your time into that. So there's a few channels I would be willing to be academically involved in. There's other channels I think we're abusing each other's most precious gift by wasting our time, minus all the stuff we do to build a community spirit. And, you know, it's, I don't think you could be 100% work, but, you know, what's the balance of focus, getting down, rolling your sleeves up, and time for check-ins? If our check-ins take an hour and a half, they're kind of probably not really serving their purpose. It's a check-in show. So that's what I'm thinking about. How do we concentrate our efforts in channels that mean something to somebody? So the thing that means something to me is trying to make these channels where people can be understood and stick it out on the long term without having trivia coming from every angle from anybody that thinks that they should free associate what the last guy said. Those are the town hall channels, and those are good too, but I don't have time to commit to 50 of those. And I guess the problem is, if you don't make the side channels, the people who need the side channels will pollute the main channel. And that's what I'm feeling. And I've asked several times, you know, is this appropriate to be talking about this here? I can go on if you like, but I'm really raising my hand of awareness. And the people who are asking me, do they realize that I'm not trying to belittle the interest in what they're saying? I just don't feel that this is maybe the appropriate audience for having consent to have somebody come back and make it so that they feel they can't catch up because it's a whole bunch of stuff that if we all looked at it, we may decide that it could have been better put somewhere else, and maybe more appropriately, and it is important. Sometimes that's the problem. Everybody's got something really important and they're all diving in. So how do we back away and say, okay, that's topic number one, let's follow that. And we did a little bit of something trying to look at different ways people could be understood a few months ago, with having people present their own ideas and be their own moderators. I think that's something we could revisit and maybe fortify, because Doug and Barry, me, Sam, various people will at times take it upon themselves to take good notes in the chat. And I find that was very valuable at steering the map I was making. So I can listen to the conversation and grab ready-made text and put it in context of the thought trail. But if I have to type it and do all the work myself and be the moderator and everything, there's no way that I could lead somebody through a mapping session. So I think it takes a focused team depending on what the container is offering. So I'll leave it there, but that's what I would like to spend my time on. I don't really care about the big bang in this forum. You know, religion's interesting, but just to keep it at bay, not to encourage it, but just to make sure that people are using it for what it's good for and not to be power over other people. That's why you keep it secular. The power over thing goes away. I got pushed back on the word secular. Maybe there's a better word I can come up with. Doug's the wordsmith, so maybe open and inclusive. But I think it's really important to state secular to the space. And now I'm going on a tangent. I shouldn't. I should do this somewhere else and ask if people are interested in this word secular. Why I think it's a good word to attach to a space and not be confused and attach it to a person. Because you can be any kind of person you want. I'm not telling you what kind of person to be. I'm saying you come to this secular space, you can be your full blossom. And if people don't like it, you're going to hear about it, but at least you get to have your voice heard. Anyway, focusing on what's important with our valuable time, building understanding. Understanding's the big word for me. And I'm going to keep beating that drum. And that's why I say less now, because I'm focusing on that. The rest really doesn't matter as far as what I have to contribute. Thanks.
Kayla, what are your thoughts? Having heard a lot of this. We haven't heard from you. Haven't heard much from Josh.
I've been listening, and I really love what both Tyra and David have been saying. So it's just been nice to listen again. And I have a really silly question for Carl. Is that a mirror or a picture of grass behind you?
It's the labyrinth area. Actually, let me bring up my.
Oh, I see. You direct. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
That's the only thing I want to ask.
Yeah, so my virtual background, I was trying to set up the green screen and I couldn't get it going, so I just so this is a labyrinth that's at a Frenton's. They have a Mountain Quest Institute. 30,000 books, built an inn and a conference center out in West Virginia and stuff. And then when I have the green screen, let me go ahead and turn it off for a second. So I tried to set it up, but it was so big, I got so disgusted, I just put it up against the wall. It's like, hey, this is cool. Then you can, and then if you turn off the green screen or check the thing, then it actually will just focus in on the green screen. So it's kind of, but sorry for this, but it's been amazing. We've been in a, you never know what barn we're going to be trying to raise. This is quite different from what I was expecting, but it's the, I guess there's the patience too, that, I mean, everybody's so ready to get rid of a certain person, but it's like, we have to wait till Thursday. So we've been waiting 4 years, just wait a few more days, but we gotta get, hold on until he's down in Florida.
I guess I missed that reference. Tyra, you wanted to speak?
45.
I wanted. I wanted to like loop back around to Colin and just make sure that I understand you, Colin. So I get the sense that you're dissatisfied with how the conversation has gone today, because perhaps we kind of floated all over the place. And so I just want to know, Colin, if you were dissatisfied with the discussion today or whether I misunderstood you.
Yes, you did misunderstand me. No, I'm not dissatisfied. For example, I guess if I should have made this point as well, and your question raises it. Do I want to put my time that I have to spend with this group in going back into footage and grabbing certain material, or would it be better if we worked towards something where we could take stuff we've done in the past as a dry run, and then the things that I'm trying to do as far as build these gems, I think I have to do a few demos to show people what I'm talking about, like how I could focus in on that topic. I've done one of Sam, So I'm debating how far back I want to actually, and how much time I want to put into it.
So
And
Colin,
definitely,
can I
definitely,
interrupt?
I'm pulling away from the drama too, because it would be just too easy for me to try to clear up some of the drama that happens by using my editing skills. And I would rather focus in on a conversation between Doug and Sam than some trivial bullshit conversation between me and Barry. Although me and Barry could have some really good conversations. I know
So
that.
my question, Colin, is do you enjoy going back into the conversations and the previous videos and doing that? Do you get joy from that? Regardless of whether anybody else is interested in it, regardless of whether anybody reads your map or any of that, is it a satisfying experience or is it not because you don't have the community on board with you?
Okay, I think joy is the wrong question. Satisfying could be appropriate if I set a goal and that goal was satisfying. So I do have some goals, like I'm upping my technical skills, being able to do video stuff, but I don't want to use people as pawns in my game and my perception. I'd rather have an agreement towards something that's more important and produce something that's more generative at the same time important to the people.
So can you be
I can go back.
satisfied?
I can go
Can
back.
you be,
I can go
can
back
you,
and do some things that would satisfy me. But again, I feel unsatisfied that I haven't put as much time in to be clear on some of these things. But I am satisfied that I've done a few. And I think Sam knows where I'm going. Alex Gagnon, he looked at my last one. He said, "Oh, that was professional." And I go, so I know I'm going in the right direction. But I would rather, as a group, have focus than me say, "Hey, everybody, listen to me. You guys don't have focus." But I think by showing better focus examples, maybe that way I could. How much time do we have? That's the problem.
so Colin, can you be satisfied with your process and be able to be satisfied if the rest of the group isn't on the same page? Like, can you, is that possible for you? Because I get the sense that you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you get frustrated that everybody else isn't on the same program. And so Mike, I just want to know, can you find a way to bring everything you want and be okay if it's just for you? Does that make sense? I don't know if I articulated that.
It certainly makes sense. And
Just because I would like to know that you're having a satisfying experience regardless of what we're all talking about.
Well, it is what I make it. And I think that what's going on is there's a trade-off between how much time you put into one particular thing, one avenue, and whether it's actually going to be of service or it's just going to be of service to me. Because I try not to do anything that's going to be a waste of my time. And so therefore, I'm doing less of things that could be a waste of my time, like being a great curator for the GCC. I'd rather see forward motion than spending my time cataloging the backwards entropy. What you're interested in is more important to me now, or things that you used to be interested that you changed. And so how are you going to bring that topic forward? Some people are here like Anna, maybe you and a few others, not so much to do a project of some sort. I don't want to peg you, but really feel into and be a service. Like I think other people are here to do a project, or at least they thought they were. So that was a big confusion in the beginning. So it is very individual, and what it is the we space is, and everybody doing what I want, like that's a loaded question. Like, what would I expect everyone to do? I would only expect everybody to understand what I'm going at, maybe give feedback. And if it's useful, then it would take on some kind of an emergence of its own. But for me to push it, that's not going to be the right way to go about it in this group. But there's several things I'm thinking about. And to put my time into every one would be to neglect the others. So
it sounds like you do have some satisfaction, even if the group isn't going just by participating. And I'm interested in what Kayla has to say about this. Kayla.
I'm so sorry. I'm not going to say anything about what you and Colin were discussing. I'm just going to bring up the fact that it's 10:04, and I'm not going to check out because I'm liking this discussion, even though I haven't really been active in talking. But just in case anybody else has to check out, I want to thank you, David, and Alex, and Sam, and you, Tyra, for bringing up your traumas. I think on Sunday, Barry might have been there, but I was saying how it's a gift to be able to have people talk about things that are really disturbing sometimes. And for me, it's it's my pleasure, and it's like an honor thing when I get to hear that, you know, people suffer. And it's not because I want to hear people suffer, but because everybody does, you know. And to get past it and to be able to share it and to be able to say, you know, I lived through this and now I'm at a better place and I want to be better service to one another and coexist. That's something to me that's very valuable. And I also want to say thank you, David, for being in service to the planet. You know, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you know, where you're going with that. I myself am kind of a modern girl. You might have seen that I was, you know, doing my face and everything. And I've done those crazy hippie things where I've walked, you know, in silence for several weekends at a time in the woods, and it's beautiful. But I kind of like my creature comforts now, and I'm at such a different space than I was before, and I'd like to see kind of those worlds intermingle, the modern with, you know, what we've learned in the past towards what we can learn in the future. I'm complete, but I'm still gonna stay here.
I'll say a little bit about this follow-up to the trauma thing, and that is, I didn't grow up in the US, but I think I did grow up in a sense very privileged. And what I'm going to describe might sound like survivor's remorse because I'm so naive, having gone through so many decades without really understanding how much trauma and how much abuse was out there. I mean, nobody sexually abused me. Nobody, I mean, I was beaten, but you know, I survived. And yet, I'm still taken aback by friendships I make with people where it eventually reaches a stage where they'll disclose something about how badly they were mistreated or abused or even raped and, you know, other. And every year I live, I finally get to appreciate that this is even more and more ubiquitous and widespread. And I lived through so many decades of naivete, not really realizing how bad this was. So I kind of in a situation where I regret not being better prepared to deal with it when I was younger. People might have been hinting at it and I had no clue. Or they might have been showing symptoms of it in their behavior that I couldn't attribute properly. And only am now thinking, oh, geez, that's why that person did that. And now it's, you know, years later and I've lost track with that person. So I could have done something, but I didn't know enough to do so. So I've talked about that. And I've also talked about this notion of safety. I got to tell you, you know, I didn't appreciate that word, safety. Just personally, one of the very earliest things my ex-wife told me was that I was safe. And I thought, that's not what I want to be known for. That's not why I want you to love me. But actually now I hear that more and more from other people, that is so much more important than I ever gave it credit for. In some ways, even more important than love, which is a kind of safety, but you know, it's a very different focus. So I'm just saying, I just had very little appreciation when I was young, but how widespread trauma was, how widespread abuse was, and how ill-equipped I was to see it. when it showed in certain behaviors. I don't know what else to say, but I just thought like, that was me. I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry. Hold on.
Oh, I guess my microphone was on. Yeah. Since today is a wide ranging, I think I mentioned some of the trauma I went through in realizing that my value system was turned on its head when I realized that everything that people have been telling me about what is better, which is follow this religious book and follow and listen to these religious people because they're have some kind of divinity about them. And you, young man, you know nothing. Takes a community to raise a child, and that's what the community wanted to do. I do consider it traumatic. Not as traumatic as finding out about Santa Claus, but or maybe vice versa. But yeah, it's and it continues to surprise me to this day. And Barry was mentioning something about stories, like when we were talking about Richard Feynman in the chat, and there's this documentary type, I don't know, they use cartoons, and I think it's called Theremin Trees, something weird word. Anyway, I posted it, and it was about stories. And I think it's very valuable, and to realize that stories can be used to manipulate as well as they can be used to make people understand things. And when you're giving these stories from the bias of religion, you don't see the encroachments on reason. You don't see it. It slips by you because they appeal to your emotion. So you have to be careful how you use story. It can't just be story, but stories that aren't meant to bully or manipulate psychologically. If you know anything about marketing, you know our brains are meant to be manipulated. So essentially, this group seems to develop in two camps. One is in trauma healing, personal triggers, and I hook onto that side of things with trying to say, okay, well, how do we keep communicating and keep it fair without having to do stories and manipulation and tricks? Like, what could people rely that if they roll the dice isn't loaded? If they want to be vulnerable and take a shot or do something. And, in the safe space here, I think we're trying to not load the dice. And that's why keep it secular. The other camp that we're in, besides the healing camp, therapy camp, is the actual SDGs and climate change, and talking about AI and talking about all of these different things and wicked problems and how you might get to the root cause. We had somebody here who gave a presentation about root cause, and now they're gone because maybe we're too much on. So I guess all I'm trying to say is I value all those conversations, even the one I had about religion and what's an atheist, and how am I all misunderstood in that area. And there's other areas where I'm misunderstood, and I would like to be able to be more clear on that, because I think people would agree with me if they heard what I'm getting at, and it's awareness. So if they don't agree with me or they don't want to talk to me, then that's one thing. But how to make a fair container so that I'm not manipulating, they're not manipulating, and we're not stepping on anybody else's time or consent, over talking, causing entropy at barn raising. Would it be better to create a thread saying, what is the GCC, or what is barn raising, or could we create a project management thread that's just about stuff that the GCC wants to do as a group? If it doesn't have to do with GCC as a group, don't put it here. If it has to do with another one about conflict resolution between members. So if these people are talking about these words and these are trigger words, well, let's get in and have a little game of discernment and figure out what these trigger words mean and how we can learn to agree or disagree better. That's what it is to me. I don't find that the trauma side of things is where I want to be. And like Sam, I feel like I've been quite privileged as well as not to been molested or any of those types of things. And even if people aren't molested, there's still a lot of people out there who I don't think can think straightly. Can't think straight. They don't quite have it. And how do we include those people or not, depending on what the context is? It's not a free for all. So I think it's really beautiful we have this space where it allows everything in, but how do we try to sort based on what we consent as importance? That's what it comes down to me, not for me to be satisfied what other people are doing. It's, are we all satisfied as a group doing the things that we consent to and find the most valuable? And, example I brought up earlier, I don't think Sam has mentioned but once legalizing prostitution in this group, but he did a post on it. And maybe it is an important thing, but maybe it's not something he wants to talk about here. So, or maybe Sam just says, well, I'll bring the important things here that I want to talk about here. Anything I put on Facebook, you can ask me, but please engage with me there for that. Like, if it's a free for all, it's really just a talk group, which is okay. But I always thought it was something more than that, a way to not just deal with people's trauma, but to also reach out and share the world trauma that we're feeling from different places, like climate change and lack of belief in the effectiveness of democracy in the modern age. And, and having special people come and share their experience and have special guests. That's kind of what I see. Maybe I'm dreaming. See, that's just it. Somebody else, Tyra, could be a completely different thing. So I don't want to belittle what Tyra wants to share or bring. It's just, is something like trauma such a big need that there could be another show like Gertrude, sprout off with Doug and Tyra and maybe Kayla doing the Tolanola or something. These are very beautiful things. But how do we appreciate what the gifts that are each other's bringing without just trying to make it a trivia show or entropy show? I don't know. I'm going to stop talking now because it's too long, but it's not about my satisfaction. And I align with a lot with what Sam says about coexistence and about happiness is not actually the goal. It's nice. Being liked is nice, but you can't always be liked either. So I think going after the truth in my mind, where it's important in public and influencing and power over is important. People's personal truths, that's their own business. And if you want to share them here, that's great. But if it's not your main purpose, then I kind of wonder why. And if it's for trauma and healing, then that's great. If it's just because you like to talk about, I don't know what the right channels are for what conversations. That's what I'm proposing. How do we have focus? Maybe we can't.
Okay. Thanks, Colin. David, I know your hand was up, but I think my hand was up, so we kind of raised our hands at the same time. Would you like to go first?
On trauma, I think the most important aspect for cohesion and moving forward in any process is starting to deal and work with that trauma. The personalization of our individual systems and the aspects that could be classed as beautifully damaged are also the beautiful repair strategies that tend to flow through the entire system of each person's life. And it gives us a handle on how we can start to heal and move forward and work together cohesively, fluidly, flowingly. Because otherwise there's just blocks, because if I'm traumatized by this, you're traumatized by that, and anything subconsciously relates to that trauma or anything anyone has done to us or we've done to anyone else, then it creates an instantaneous block. So all of this is a process, and for my part, in eco villages that we've engaged within, it's part of the process of moving forward as a community to a point where we have a world view, and then we create projects that we can work on as individuals or as in pod groups or satellite groups, which create a greater global expansion or a greater global healing process. And basically everything that we're at this moment and everything that seems to be happening in the world and the schism or movement from that sort of divine green print or that beautiful world that we could have is probably due to trauma. If not 100% definitely due to trauma. Now, to hear each other's stories is an integral part of that release and that acceptance and that safety that Sam is speaking of. And in that, trust is formed, and that's the foundation of creation and the foundation of life. Love comes into that throughout that whole system. And it's a good starting point. It's a good starting point. It's a great starting point. I think it's a necessary thing as well. If every politician went through trauma counselling and went on a not necessarily an ayahuasca retreat, but started to look inside and started to release the trauma and programming that they had, the world would not be in the place it is now. The top-heavy, dominant, masculinated governance systems that rape and pillage the planet and have, stamped on indigenous peoples across the globe, etc., and removed our indigeneity. Because basically, we're all indigenous. We can prove that we're all owners or stewards of the earth because we're made of it. We've got all the chemical formulations within us to prove that. Apart from the crap that we're being fed from factories, which is from the earth as well. I hasten to add, which is from the stars, which is from the universe. We are all indigenous. We call indigenous people this because we've been denaturalized through a process. A schooling process, removal from our communities process, a process of monetarization, of digitization. Oh, let's make it digital. Now, all of these things have interplay, but if we are traumatized, we'll lean towards one that either is close to our trauma or as far away from our trauma as possible. It creates blockages, it creates schisms, it creates steers, it creates flowing too fast. All of these things, all of these lacks of governance are due to an ideal of brokenness when we're all perfect in reality. So we're just finding our flow and our center space again and just realigning like a wheel rights a wheel. We're just righting our wheel, I guess.
I know you wanted to go, Sam, but can I just pop a thought out before I lose it, which is, I believe we all have value in this group for our own personal experiences. So each one of us brings a toolbox to a group based on our personal experiences. And each one of us are valuable as a result. If we all came in with the same mental outlook, there would be nothing fresh. There would, it wouldn't be brainstorming. It would be just one big brain. In this group, I value Alex for what he brings. Alex brings a very certain thing each time he speaks. I value him for that. I value all of you for each of your individual tools. Colin, you also, I value your mind for the way you steer things to achieve a goal that you see. And I find that valuable. Same with Barry. Barry brings tremendous value. Without each of our individual traumas, experiences, successes, we'd be a dull lot. So I appreciate everything that each person brings to the conversation as a result of who they've grown into as a human being. Sorry, Sam. I just had to get that out.
No, thanks, Tyra. And that is your way of bringing your value. I'm just soaking in that before I even speak. I wanted to respond a little bit. I was a little bit triggered, maybe more than a little bit, by a couple of references to the fact that today we've been quote unquote all over the place, okay? Because I hold in myself a map that unfortunately I don't yet share with all of you, which is, and I've referred to this before, this larger arc of barn raising conversations, of the space of barn raising conversations. I actually hark back to an achievement from a few months ago that we as a group seem to have, those of us who were present, in a sense, really opted in to the value of this notion of focus. We can build a lot on that, because if we value focus, we can also really drill in and inquire what prevents us from achieving focus. And for me, that goes towards distractions, which goes towards triggers, which are, basically traumas and, abuse at the core. So to me, that arc of traumas to triggers to focus to, that to me is a very, very clear foundation on what we're trying to, or what I'm seeking to explore in barn raising. So to me, it's not all over the place. To me, it's actually quite directly addressing what it takes to build barns or foundations. We're not going to build barns or foundations if we can't even focus on, hey, where's the tool, or where are we going to put this, or all those sort of things which require some sort of focus. But if we can't focus because of all of these things that I mentioned, I want to talk about this, I'm hurt by that, I'm offended by this, I'm triggered by that, my abuse causes me to do this. Those are things worth leaning into in my mind, because those help us build a good solid foundation for whatever the barn ends up looking like. So I just wanted to respond that way to this comment that has appeared here a couple of times and in other conversations many times, that we appear to be all over the place. To me, there's a very strong inner connection between all of these ideas. And then we can actually then figure out, how do we want to address them? Do we want to take care of them here? Do we want to take care of them elsewhere? Do we want to make micro agreements? Do we want to understand how to listen to each other? Do we want to have a space where we feel not just with our minds, but with our hearts and with our first chakras? The whole safety thing, by the way, to me, goes all the way down to the first chakra, if you believe in chakras, okay? So as a whole body participant, a whole multiple chakra participant in these conversations, I'm not addressing it purely from an intellectual, or purely from an emotional, or purely from a gut, or purely from a, sexual, or purely from a, survival perspective. I'm trying to incorporate all of that. I'm trying to bring my entire self to this. That's why when I do say I do value focus, and yet somebody really, really wants to, address something because it's important to that person and it's triggering in some way, I personally would like to find some space for that, because if I don't, then that person's not going to feel safe, not going to feel heard, and we're not going to hear that aspect that may, there may be 14 minutes of ranting in the last 30 seconds. That's the connection that was so important that we could miss if we just say, hey, that's not for this space. And we don't yet have those monoliths of agreements that say, here's a 14-page handbook on how you're supposed to behave here. We barely have one line. So I'm still trying to figure out what we can build on top of that, that we all find enabling and sustaining and healthy and joy-making and co-creating and sense-making and co-visioning, all of that. Without saying, hey, lawyers know how to do this, just incorporate this 28-page contract and here we go. Off we go. We know how to do things. That's the old model. I'm here trying to experiment with you guys to figure out whether we can create something different. Okay, that's why I see this all in a very connected space. And that's my long-winded response to this is all over the place. To me, it's not. Thanks for listening. I might use that as my checkout, by the way, because I have to take my daughter to go meet some of her friends. They're going to a park with the dogs later today. I'll leave this open though. I'll make somebody else host so you guys can go as long as you guys like, okay? But note that as long as it goes over 4 hours, YouTube is not going to create a transcript out of it, okay?
Before we veer off into misunderstanding any further, I wrote in the chat that I think that we focused on a lot of different topics. I don't think we were all over the place in not focusing on different topics. We were all over the place in focusing. And I also asked you, what topics do you think are not connected? Because you can find a way to connect most anything. And I agree with what you're saying, these things are connected. And on my journey map, the first thing, gate 1, is basically a wellness center, or what you would consider a place where you would deal with your traumas or spirituality, or, you know, are you ready for the journey? So if you got somebody who's not mentally able to take the journey and you send them out there, they might not be informed. And who decides who's ready? Who decides who's got what trauma? So yeah, it's a big part of the journey map for sure, but it's not the only part. And I just think it might need to be bigger, maybe mobile. The
I want
trauma
to take a
center. Go ahead.
3-second pause